What's goody with you all today? My name is RayGVT and today we are back in the arena duelists, and today I want to bring you a showcase of what is single-handedly my favorite deck and one of my favorite archetypes in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Code Talkers. It's been a while since I've done one of these types of videos, but I've been wanting to put out more Master Duel videos. It's just that the game ain't the easiest when you don't want to throw money at it. Anyways, all of that aside, let's get back to the main topic. Now, I've talked a lot about my history and love for this deck specifically in various videos on this channel, but to give you the rundown real quick, this is the deck that not only got me back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Properly back in 2020, but it got me to stay with the game. Back in 2020, when the world was in lockdown and people were finding new enjoyment in their favorite hobbies, I sat down and watched Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, an anime that I've raved on about for ages and is so close to taking over the title as my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series of all time next to 5Ds. Like, it's right there. Anyways, watching this anime for the first time after taking a break from Yu-Gi-Oh! For a while just lit the fire of new interest in the game for me and is the reason why I'm still with the game today. The new link summoning mechanic was very interesting and cool to me back then. I really liked it, and the deck that showcased that the best was Code Talkers. These Cyberse warriors of the net were so cool to me, and because of that, I began ordering cards again, buying packs again, and just building decks. This was the first deck I built to get back into the game and immediately jump back in. It's the deck that I've competed in competitions and tournaments with, and is the deck that I'm just the most comfortable with. Seriously, I can't tell you enough how much this specific deck and archetype has meant to my overall enjoyment of this game that I love so much. But enough of the backstory and intro. Let's get into the strengths and weaknesses and take a look at the archetype and deck as a whole. Cyberse and Cynet were a brand new typing that were introduced back in starter deck Link Strike and would continue to receive support through the subsequent starter and structure decks with both Power Code Link and Cyberse Link. They would also receive support throughout the main sets too, such as Extreme Force, Eternity Code, and Cyberstorm Access. Code Talkers are an archetype that utilize their link arrows to give each other unique effects and boost each other's powers when linked in the process. This is called co-linking. Now, to the seasoned Yu-Gi-Oh! Player, you already know all of this, but I'm explaining this because it's important for the deck highlight and for the people a little less familiar. Though Code Talkers naturally synergize well with the Cyberse typing, Cyberse is such a huge typing now with so many cards that you still have to be careful of the cards you pick when building a Code Talker deck. So, as we do on here, I'm going to be taking you guys on my version of the Code Talker deck in Master Duel and be giving you guys a rundown of some of the cards that I choose to play, some key staples, as well as some different choices and options of what you can play. Now, the main goal of Code Talkers is to utilize their link arrows and co-linking abilities to create the U-Lock. This is created by linking together Code Talker monsters on the board so they all point to each other to get maximum use out of their extra effects when linked. There are several ways to do this and make this happen, and while this is the more optimal way to play the deck, today, I want to show you guys what else the deck is capable of. Like I mentioned, there are so many different card combinations and techs that you can utilize to really make this deck run. It's a deck that I've constantly changed throughout my time playing the game. Sure, I can just super U-Lock my opponent out, but I also have access to some really fun strategies that use the main deck Cyberse monsters too. One of my favorite ways to play the deck is by utilizing the different Cyberse dragons such as the Firewall, Exceed, Clock, and Quantum Dragon. If your U-Lock plan ever fails, just know that this is an archetype that always has a backup plan. And if all else fails, you have the access to victory in the form of Access Code Talker. But we'll get to that. For now, let's go over the actual deck now, shall we? Starting us up is Microcoder, a level 1 Cyberse monster that strength-wise can't do much, but you can use this card as link material while it's in your hand for a link summon. When it's sent to the grave for a link summon of a Code Talker monster, you can search any Cynet spell or trap in your deck. If it was on the field when you use it to link summon, then you can search any level 4 Cyberse monster in your deck and add it to your hand. This little guy is the heartbeat of the deck and he's out searching for some really key cards. You can't have a Code Talker deck without him, and I cannot stress enough that this guy is an absolute essential at 3, no less. Code Generator and Code Radiator are also very similar cards to Microcoder in what they can do, but they have different effects when used for link summoning a Code Talker monster. Generator allows you to send a monster with 1700 attack or less to the grave, which you can use to set up some nice plays. Your target for this will vary, but for me is usually Sea Archiver. If this card was on the field for linking, you add that card to your hand instead. Radiator lets you reduce an opponent's monster's attack to 0 and negate its effects for the turn when used in hand, and when on the field, lets you target 2 monsters for this instead. And last of the squad is Code Exporter. When used from hand, you can target a level 4 or lower monster in your grave and add it to your hand, and when on the field for linking, you can special summon that monster instead but negate its effects. All 4 of these cards fit in the same group and are pretty essential to the Code Talker strategy, but out of all of them, Microcoder is essential at 3, and the rest of them are up to you for the ratios. I usually run 1 generator, 1 exporter, and 2 radiators. Moving on, we have Lady Debug, a great starter card that lets you search a level 3 or lower Cyberus monster and add it to your hand. A great card for both starting and extending your plays, and is also quite essential to this strategy. Both Dotscaper and Sea Archiver are great targets for cards like Code Generator, as they have good graveyard effects that allow them to be special summoned when sent there, or when a link monster is summoned, and place them where the arrow points in the monster zone. Clock Wyvern is another great card and extender, and is here mainly when I want to shoot for the clock strategy involving Cyber's Clock Dragon. I call this the Clock Over. But even without that, Clock Dragon is a good card as it gives you a token by cutting its attack in half, which then opens you up to some nice plays with the new material. And last of the essentials is Parallel Exceed. This card needs no introduction, but it's great for extending your plays and for bringing out Firewall Exceed Dragon. Yes, really. I like to play this deck in different ways, but of course you will be using this card for much more than that. Quick lightning round of some of the other little guys that are good for the deck. Cyber's Gadget lets you special a level 2 or lower Cyberus monster from your grave to your field, and when it lands in the grave, generates you a free token. Both Widget Kid and Balancer Lord allow for good extensions by giving you an extra normal summon on your turn, and with spells like Signet Optimization, these boys can help you out so much. Cyber's Secretary is a free special summon when you control another Cyberus on the field, and is another great extender. You notice how much extension is key in this deck? And lastly, Cyber Synchron is a tutor that lets you increase the level of a level 4 or lower monster you control to adjust for synchro summoning Cyber's Quantum Dragon. Yes, really. And that's it for the monsters. Now let's go over the spells and traps. Now, just like there's a ton of different Cyberus monsters that you could use when building this deck, there are a heap of spells and traps that you can pull from too, specifically Signet spells and traps. Again, feel free to experiment yourself with what works and what doesn't, but let me take you through some of my options. First up is Signet Mining. This card, I would say, is the only essential spell that you need whenever building any Cyberus based deck. By sending a card from your hand to the grave, you can add any level 1 to 4 Cyberus monster from your deck to your hand. This is a once per turn effect. This is our searcher and can help us set up some plays, as again, there are some cards that we do need in the grave when given the chance. Signet Codec is a 100% essential card in any Code Talker deck. It's our main engine of the deck. Every time a Code Talker monster is special summoned from the extra deck to the field, you can target one of those monsters and add one Cyberus monster with the same attribute from your deck to your hand. You cannot add other monsters with the same attribute to your hand by the effect of Signet Codec the same turn, and this is only a once per chain effect. Put it simply, whenever you special summon a Code Talker monster from your extra deck, this card allows you to search your deck for a monster with the same attribute as the Code Talker that you just summoned and add it to your hand. It's great for generating hand advantage, especially since you be linking off a lot into your Code Talkers in a single turn. However, it does lock you into only special summoning Cyberus monsters, which ain't no problem here. This card is an essential 3 of and is key to the Code Talker strategy overall. A card that I see almost as important but isn't really given much attention is Signet Optimization. When a Code Talker monster battles, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. During your main phase, you can normal summon one Cyberus monster, which is huge in a deck like this. Again, you are locked into only special summoning Cyberus monsters for the rest of the turn, but again, that's not a problem here. And finally, some quick fire options. Signet Backdoor is a good card to get your monster out of a tight spot and bring it back during your next standby phase. Signet Crosswipe is our removal card by tributing one Cyberus monster, and Signet Storm is a field spell that boosts the power of all Cyberus monsters and lets you shuffle your extra deck and special summon the top card if it's a Cyberus Link monster if you take 2000 or more battle or effect damage. This card is completely optional, by the way. The only reason that I have it in this build is because I like to change it up a lot with this deck. And for the traps, we have both Recoded Alive and Signet Conflict. Signet Conflict being a great reversal card that allows you to negate a spell or trap or monster effect when you control a Code Talker monster. And if you do, banish that card, and if you do that, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects with the same name as that card that you just banished until the end of the next turn. Very nice. Onto some of the extra deck stuff, and we play all of the essential Code Talker monsters, starting with Talkback Lancer as your Link 1, Code Talker and Code Talker Inverted as your Link 2s, and then we have X Code Talker, Trans Code Talker, and Shooting Code Talker for our Link 3s. followed by Access Code Talker as our link for boss monster. We play Access Code because he belongs here, not because he's convenient for the deck. He's literally the leader of the archetype, so don't even. All of these Code Talkers have their own amazing effects when linked to each other, but the essential ones that you need to know of is Transcode Talker, who can special summon back a link 3 or lower Cyberus monster to the zone it points to, which is great for extension and recursion. And your other big one is Access Code Talker, a boss that needs no introduction but is amazing for its destruction ability whether you have the upper hand or not. Getting all of these cards linked together is the main goal. You want them to be able to talk to each other so you can maximize on all of their effects. Beyond that, we have some other extra links that come in handy, such as Cyberus Wicked, who protects monsters he points to, as well as searches out Cyberus Synchron if a monster is special summoned to the zone it points to by banishing another monster. Cyberus Witch is handy whenever you want to try out the Cyberus Ritual package because it does come in handy and has its uses. And Splash Mage is a great extender for the deck that allows us to special summon a Cyberus monster from the grave, but negates the effects of that monster. This card is great when you just need to retrieve some resources to keep your plays going. Clock Spark Toy helps us when we want to use Plan B and go for our Clock OTK. And speaking of, lastly, I run all 4 main Cyberus dragons, including Firewall Dragon, of course. I find it pretty essential to the deck, Firewall Exceed Dragon, and both Cyberus Quantum Dragon and Cyberus Clock Dragon. I find all 4 of these guys to be very useful when you need to reach for your backup plan, if your link plays ever gets a little bit messy or inconsistent. Each of them have some very useful effects, whether it's bouncing cards back or just powering up to the max. You will always have a safe plan B with these cards. Now, I just want to reiterate again that this is a deck that I'm constantly changing, so there might not be some other essential cards that you guys might think of in this build specifically, but I encourage you guys to really try this deck out with some other cards that you might see fit. Cyberus is an incredibly flexible strategy that just naturally synergizes with itself and the cards in its archetype, so definitely do play around and see what fits you best. A few things to know and be careful of with this deck: its weakness is that it can fall apart to a few floodgates and any effects that stop you from special summoning. You do special summon and burn through quite a lot of resources in a single turn with it, so anything that stops you from doing that and you're kind of a sitting duck unless you can safely execute some backup plans. Watch out for cards like Nibiru because bouncing back, though very possible, is still quite challenging. Maxi is a card that you have to be extremely careful of too, again because of how much special summoning that you're doing in a single turn. Though there are still ways to get around this, like if you're able to successfully evenly lock your opponent out. Another thing as well is that because all the main deck cards and Code Talker extra deck monsters are all different attributes, anything that prevents different attributes being present is a real problem. However, this archetype is quite strong and very flexible with what it can do, and you are able to execute very nicely with it still. Now, taking all of this with us, we're gonna go on ahead and see how we do in some duels. Let's get to it. Alright, so here we are. We're gonna jump in straight into our first duel. Now, this first duel here is it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty basic. I'm just trying to showcase the strengths of the Code Talker archetype and deck here. So we're gonna begin, and this is how a lot of your Code Talker plays in turns are gonna open up. So we do open up with both Signet Codec and Signet Universe. Signet Universe we have, so we may as well just use. I'm gonna special summon the Link Slayer and use the microcoder to go straight into our our Link 2 Code Talker. Signet Codec is then gonna activate, and then we're gonna chain that with our microcoder. So microcoder is gonna allow us to add a Signet spell or trap to our hand. We're gonna go with optimization, and then Codec is gonna allow us to add Nightmare Corruptor Ebly. So with Ebly, we're able to summon it right underneath Code Talker. I'm gonna use the extra normal summon that optimization gives me to get that Sea Archiver and link off both my Code Talker and Ebly. Go straight into the Transcode Talker, activating Codec, doing its thing. Ebly will also chain in response. So what's gonna happen here is that Ebly is gonna be able to get special summoned to our opponent's side. So this essentially locks our opponent into only being able to special summon Link monsters, which is going to be very helpful. Transcode Talker is going to allow us to get our Code Talker back, and with that, we're going to link it off straight into Xcode Talker. Now, with Xcode Talker on the field, Signet Codec will activate one more time, and Xcode will also use its effect to block off one of the zones on our opponent's side of the field, which is very helpful. Now, Sea Archiver being sent to the graveyard is able to come straight back. We're gonna put that right next to Xcode Talker just so we can boost up as much as we can. I'm gonna use Code Exporter, which is in my hand, to link off with my Sea Archiver to just go straight into Code Talker inverted. Inverted is gonna fire off the Silent Codec, and this is how a lot of your Code Talker turns are gonna look like. Every single time you activate, every single time you summon a Code Talker monster from your extra deck, Silent Codec will fire off. It will allow you to add more material to your hand, which is going to be really cool for extension. Speaking of extension, we're going to be able to get Backup Secretary up in here. We're going to be able to link 3 straight into Shooting Code Talker now. And once again, Codec is going to go ahead, do its thing. We're gonna use Generator's effect as well. Now here I misplaced slightly. Rather than sending the Dotscaper to my grave, I accidentally sent Microcoder to the grave, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. We're gonna hand it off to our opponent, and here we find out that our opponent is playing Mayakashi. Now our opponent is gonna try and crash into our Code Talker inverted with the Eebly. But because of silent optimization, they aren't able to activate any effects. So that essentially locks them out during the battle phase from like activating any effects, which is very, very helpful. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and activate Shooting Code Talker's effect. They're gonna respond with Mayakashi Mayhem. It won't matter too much. We're gonna battle with inverted. Now, observe what happens every time we play with our Code Talkers. Every time any of them battle, silent optimization locks our opponent out of activating absolutely anything, which is gonna clear us a path to go in for that clear swing. So that is basic Code Talker 101, and that is gonna do it for duel number 1. All right, and so here we are with duel number 2. Now in this duel, I wanted to showcase kind of what I was mentioning earlier on in the video with this deck being able to continue playing and kind of having a backup plan if ever your linking strategy kind of like fails. If your like U-Lock or just your link plays in general ever kind of like goes south, you always do have a plan B with this deck. So here, we're gonna go ahead and open up with Silent Codec and Microcoder both in our hand. This is why it's so important that we run both of these cards, both Silent Codec and Microcoder, at a maximum of 3 in the deck, because they're the 2 cards that you want to be able to see all the time. If you don't open Silent Codec, you want to be able to add that from Microcoder as early as possible if you don't open it with a turn 1. But we're going to go ahead, open with both, which is going to allow us to go straight into our Code Talker. Parallel Exceed was also able to activate, and Microcoder is going to get a silent optimization added to our hand, which we're going to activate straight away because that's going to come in handy a lot later down the track. So from here, we're able to get into our Transcode Talker, and Transcode Talker is going to go ahead and bring back our Code Talker, be able to link off using our code generator, and from here, we're going to be able to go into Xcode Talker. So Xcode Talker being our other link 3 in here is going to allow Silent Codec and code generator to fire off, and Xcode is also going to fire off on its effect, allowing us to block out our opponent's zone. So we do block the zone right in front of Transcode Talker. From there, we're going to send Sea Archiver to the grave from Generator's effect. And then Optimization is going to allow us to summon Clock Wyvern one more time, who's going to allow us to extend a little bit further by giving us that extra material. Archiver's effect is going to go off. We're going to be able to link 2 straight into Code Talker Inverted. I really like Code Talker Inverted. It's kind of necessary, I see. It's like that bridge to kind of complete your U-Lock. I do see it as kind of necessary, but obviously later on you are able to kind of let it go into something a little bit more powerful. So from here, I'm going to go ahead, link off into Shooting Code Talker, who's going to be able to point directly left and up, and then from there, Silent Codec is going to go ahead, do its thing. Dotscaper is going to come back, and here we're going to end our turn right here. And the reason why I didn't finish the U-Lock in this duel was because I don't believe I was running Talkback Lancer in this specific version of the deck. I remember I was tweaking it quite a little bit, and I think I removed Talkback Lancer for some reason I can't remember. But anyway, we're going to pass it up to our opponent's turn, and here we find out that they're playing Red Dragon Archfiend. So they're going to be able to synchro summon into Red Rising Dragon, and from there, Red Rising Dragon's effect is going to activate, allowing them to bring back the Crimson Resonator, which is going to allow them to synchro summon one more time into their Hot Red Dragon Archfiend. And now Hot Red Dragon Archfiend is going to give us a little bit of a problem here. We're going to get Sea Archiver to outside of the field, but Hot Red Dragon Archfiend is going to go ahead and destroy 2 of our links, which is very, very problematic. So we're going to have to kind of figure out our way around and play around this, because our opponent is firing on all cylinders. They're going to go ahead, go into the Hot Red Dragon, Archfiend, King Bane. And from here, they bring back their Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, and they weren't able to attack. I can't remember the exact reason why, but we're in a bit of a spot here, but it's not really too much of an issue. Transcode Talker is going to allow us to bring back our Xcode Talker right underneath it, and just like that, again, we are linking off and completing all of these plays. We are going to go into the one and only Access Code Talker. Access Code Talker is going to go ahead, get set up on the board, which is going to allow Codec and Microcoder to do their things. And with Microcoder, I'm going to actually add Sign of Conflict, because this is a card that you want to be able to add whenever you get the chance. If you already have your Codec, if you already have your optimization, add that conflict to your hand, because it's going to come in so handy. Access Code Talker is going to go ahead, do his thing, and just clear the board and clear us a path to victory, essentially. So we're going to go ahead and Synchro Summon for ourselves into Cyber's Quantum Dragon, just because we can, just to be safe as well. So here, we attack with everything, and optimization, and you just notice how it just locks out your opponent completely. Not that it really matters too much in this duel. Our opponent didn't really have anything in their hand or on their field, so our path was clear anyway. But yeah, that was kind of just like a little short example of just you are able to continue just going off, even if your link plays do get a little bit messy. But yeah, that's gonna do it for duel number 2. Alright, and now we're gonna be able to come around with duel 3 to close it all out. Now, duel number 3 was a little bit more straightforward, but I still did want to showcase what Code Talker is capable of, Code Talker and everything that it's able to do. So we are able to open with basically a full hand. This isn't going to allow us to go full combo, but we're still going to try and make the most of it. So Link Slayer is going to be able to get special summoned. Sign Up Mining will send our Dotscaper off to the grave, which will get us our Lady Debug. Lady Debug will add us Generator. Dotscaper comes onto the field, and from here, you kind of already know how the song and dance goes by this point. We summon first into our Link 2 Code Talker, and because we didn't open with Signet Codec this time around, it's so important that we add it to our hand from the Microcoder effect. So as long as you open at least one of them, you're fine most of the times. So from here, your Code Talker play is going to look very, very basic. This is how a lot of Code Talker just turn 1 plays look. So we go into our Xcode Talker. Signet Codec is going to be able to fire off, allowing Code Generator to also be activated from the grave. Xcode is going to activate first, blocking off our opponent's zone. We block the one just right in front of Transcode Talker, just to avoid any shenanigans. C Archive is going to be sent to the grave, and Parallel Exceed is going to be added to our hand. Now, from here, we weren't really able to do a whole lot turn 1, and that's just because we kind of capped out there. We couldn't really summon anything else, but our opponent is going to go ahead, set up whatever they can to kind of try and stop us, which isn't really too much. I do know this is a little bit of a cheese deck. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more they could have been able to do, but that's not going to stop us. We're going to continue off, just going off with everything that we can do right here. Go into our Code Talker Inverted, which is going to safely bridge that middle link. Codec is going to go off. Export is also going to go off with Inverted's effect. So that's going to be really nice because Parallel Exceed is also going to be able to activate, which is going to be able to get summoned straight onto the field. Exporter will allow us to add a Microcoder back from our grave to our hand, and Backup Secretary is going to get added to our hand too. From here, we link off into Firewall Dragon, a big favorite card of mine. I love this card so much. So from here, we're going to continue linking off, go into our Shooting Code Talker. This is going to basically, we won't be able to complete our U-Lock here just because we don't really have anything in our hand, but it won't really matter too much because Firewall is going to be able to bounce our opponent's monster back to their hand. Signet Codec is going to go off. We're going to add Radiator, and then Microcode is going to allow us to add Optimization. We activate Optimization straight away, and we go straight to battle. Shooting Code's effect will activate. Now, because of our opponent's spell, we do get burned for 500 every time, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Optimization just shuts everything off, and just because the field is already clear from monsters, we just go straight in. So you guys kind of get it. Code Talker it's very straightforward, but it does have a little bit of complexity to it with just how the link mechanic works for it. I love that they get those boosts off of each other's effects, so you want to be able to maximize on every single link card that you have in this deck. But yeah, that's gonna close it out for duel number 3, and we're gonna roll it over now. And that's gonna do it for the deck video. Hope you guys enjoyed the small showcase. It feels real good to be back with the Master Duel vids, and I'm keen to bring a lot more in the near future again like we used to. I just want to reiterate again that these vids are supposed to be more of an intro to the archetype and deck that I'm playing, and are supposed to be my own personal experiences with them while I learn on the ladder. I play Master Duel for fun more than anything, so keep that in mind. I really enjoy playing Code Talkers, and like I said multiple times already, it's literally my favorite deck in the whole game. I'm still finding and discovering new things every day, so I'd love to showcase even more of this deck in the future. What are you guys' thoughts or experiences with this deck? Let me know. And if there's ever a deck or archetype you guys would like to see showcased on these videos, do let me know too. I'm very keen to share the experience as always. Anyways guys, thanks for tuning in again, and stay tuned for even more to come. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the duel arena. I'm gonna have a video coming out very soon. Oh no! This is what I hate about this deck. Oh no, we got imbued. Rip in rip, bruh. Rip in freaking rip. Uno reverse, it's okay. Uno reverse him too. Continue main phase, we can't do nothing.